Right. Hi, this is Morgan with the American SPCC. I'm here with Jeri-Ashley, who is a mom to multiples, mindfulness and parenting coach, business owner, full-time educator, and community advocate. She holds her BA in sociology and master's in education, has worked with school-age children, parents, and educators for over 10 years, focusing on providing each with tools to be more mindful and create strong, healthy relationships while also maximizing each individual's strengths. Jeri-Ashley, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So Jeri-Ashley is a member of our Trusted Parenting Network. And today we're going to be focusing on a pretty hot topic. We're going to talk about communicating with preteens and teens. So
One of my favorite topics.
yeah, I know it's definitely popular. I don't know if most would say favorite. So hopefully you can make it a little more approachable for our caretakers out there. So I guess just to get us started, so how would you say communicating with teens differs from communicating with younger kids for the parents that are trying to kind of make that transition as their kids age?
So one of the things that comes to mind, one of the first things that comes to mind is that we are no longer talking to what we perceive as tiny humans. And I'm a firm believer that we should be talking to our kids of all ages in clear and concise, with clear and concise messaging. We should be upfront. If we are able to share our reasoning, we should share our reasoning. As our kids get older, though, the conversations that we are having are different because they are experiencing heavier things when they go to school. They are being exposed to more things. So the conversation topics are shifting to things that can feel really uncomfortable and very challenging, not only for us, but for our kids as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And what are some of the ways that you mentioned that the topics can be increasingly uncomfortable as they
Mhm.
age. So what are ways that you see parents kind of closing themselves off to having those conversations?
So when I see those conversations happening, typically it's very lecture based. It's a lot of the parent talking, a lot of them what feels like coming at the kids. And our kids actually know a lot more than we think they do, and also sometimes that they let on. And I've experienced this firsthand with my own child. And so a great way to start some of those conversations is just by opening it up. Hey, this is a conversation we need to be having. Are you, number one, open to having that conversation right now? If not, let's set a date and time to have it. But also starting that conversation off by asking them, share with me what like what you've heard, because I don't want to be talking at you. I want this to be a two-way conversation. When we open it up with bringing them into the conversation, it completely shifts the dynamic. So when we're having those conversations and communicating with our tweens and teens, I'd say one of the biggest ways that it's kind of different when we're opening it up to them bringing in what they already know.
Yeah, that's great. I know that parents a lot of times just want to have the right thing to say. And in doing that, sometimes, like you said, it turns more into a lecture than a dialogue. But I think that, there might be some parents or caretakers listening and they're saying, I feel like I really try. I ask my teenager questions. I try to show interest, but I find it very hard to connect. Why do you think it's like this age is particularly hard to connect with, and this relationship is more hard to build?
When I think about the relationship at this age and stage, we have come from this place with our younger kids where it was easy. Things might have felt light and breezy and airy and fun. And we go do something and they want to come with us, and everything was a yes or eventually a yes. And there was a lot more excitement and willingness from them. And then they hit this certain age. And I would say for most people I hear it's from about like 9 to 12, where they say, my baby's changing. They're not the same person anymore. And you are correct, they're not the same person anymore because they're reaching these new levels of consciousness. And so their ideas are forming differently. They're turning into these people who don't know who they are. And that's hard because one day they might feel like this person and the next they feel like someone else. And it's very challenging to navigate the relationship when I don't really know as a parent what's going on with my child, like what they're experiencing. And they also don't have the language to necessarily articulate what's going on for them, what they're experiencing, and even advocating for themselves. So at this age, I'd say the hardest thing is trying to find the flow of what that relationship is going to look like.
Yeah. That's, that's so interesting to think about, and I think watching your child, go through those stages and be so questioning and try to figure things out, you just want to help, And
Mhm.
so, what do you think it looks like for parents to be good guides without trying to control their child?
So, two very big important things. And so, the first one kind of leans more towards the communication piece, which is just listening. It's hard to be a guide and to truly be able to help my child when I haven't taken the time to listen and actually internalize what it is that they're needing versus what I think they're needing. So, practicing active and reflective listening where we're really soaking in what's going on for them and even asking them like, hey, what do you need from me right now? How can I support you? And then the second thing I would say is modeling. And I'm actually posting a reel about this, but modeling is probably one of the most underrated things that we can do for our
Yeah.
kids when we think about how to support them, how to teach them certain skills, how to help them navigate life. Um, some of our parents grew up in the generation of do as I say, not as I do. And maybe
Mhm.
you yourself heard that when you were growing up. That was something that, that I heard from older family members.
Definitely.
Yep. And so we ourselves have to shift from this place of not coming at the situations as do as I say, not as I do, and really honing in on do as I do and being the person who models what we want to see, not just saying what we want to see.
And speaking of modeling, are there particular things that you find like common for parents to model without realizing that's actually like causing harm? Like, what are some things for parents to really think about and be more conscious of that, maybe they're subconsciously modeling in a way that they should shift? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
honestly, the biggest thing, and it's funny because we're talking about this, the biggest thing is communication. One of the top things parents come to me about is, especially with tweens and teens, is my child's not talking to me, they're not opening up. My child's talking to me disrespectfully with an attitude, they're being rude. And then as we're digging deeper, I hear, okay, and I probably shouldn't have spoken to them that way. Our kids pick up on that. And so they essentially match our energy. If we're raising our voice and we're coming at our kids a certain way, guess what? They're probably going to come at you the same way that you're coming at them. And we don't always realize it. It's not from a place of maliciousness, it's really just from a place of not being aware of that we're even doing that. And so being very mindful and conscious about how you're speaking to your kids, what you are saying. And the best way to do this, two things, is to number one, slow down.
Mm.
And number two, I practice what I'm going to say to my kids before we're having certain conversations. I don't come into a conversation right away and just start spewing things out. I think about what I'm going to say beforehand. And if they ask me something in the moment and I don't know, I say, you know what, that's a great question. I need to think about that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that later tonight. It doesn't have to be in this moment. So I give myself that time to think about it because I don't want to say things that I can't hold my promise to or that maybe later I'm going to regret.
And I think that whole, like, admitting that you don't know everything is probably even bigger for this age because, maybe they're starting to learn things that they want to teach you, they come home and
Mhm.
they don't wanna think that you've already have it in your head that, like, you have all the answers and that, like, that exchange just, like, wouldn't be welcome, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So Any final, like, examples or tips you have just to broadly build consistent, healthy communication, between caregivers and teens and tweens?
Yes, so I had kind of touched on one, which is to practice reflective and active listening. So the reflective listening is where you state back, you paraphrase, like you summarize what you just heard to make sure. And I always end with like, did I get that right? Did I understand that correctly, or did I miss anything? Um, and the active listening can be a multitude of things. It could be like kind of making some tone, noises with your voice that are non-verbal. Like I'm not saying anything, but I'm just like ooh, kind of nodding,
Yeah.
looking at them in the eyes, just be like, man. So just kind of mimicking and really mirroring what it is that they are, that they're saying, can be a part of active listening. And the other thing is to just get more curious, ask more questions, open yourself up to not knowing and being like, hey, can you share more with me about that? Hey, I'm wondering, why that came up. I'm curious, what's going on right now versus what's wrong with you. There's a difference. I'm asking the same thing, but there's a difference. So get curious, because that curiosity is going to show up in your tone. And the last thing I would say is just shift your mindset. Oftentimes, as parents, I think a lot of this comes from how many of us were raised. It can feel like it's us against them.
Mm,
And so when we approach our conversations with, it's me against my child, we come at it a different way versus it's me with my child. I'm working with my child to problem solve. I'm working with my child to get through this moment. I'm working with my child. That conversation is different. Your tone is different. The way in which you show up in that conversation is different. And I think that just spans any interaction you're having with your kids. When you think about it as me and my child, it is us, it is we, things start to look different. That perspective starts to look different. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do as parents, especially as our kids continue to get older and hit these different ages and stages.
definitely. And those were such great tangible examples. I think what we tried to always do is give parents and caregivers really specific takeaways that they can apply quickly, as quick as they're able to try to really start shifting, the dynamic in their home. And so I think you gave a lot of those, and we're so thankful, for your time and for your expertise and sharing that with us today.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much again for having me.